everyone, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 21 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in CHIKARA history with match number 30 on our list, which is the CHIKARA Grand Championship match between the champion Eddie Kingston and the challenger Sara Del Rey from the CHIKARA The Great Escape event held on July the 28th of 2012. One thing that CHIKARA was never shy about, pretty much, from very, very early on in its run, was intergender wrestling. So, that's a mixed bag depending on who you are and what your thoughts are on that. But CHIKARA really was a trendsetter when it came to presenting female wrestlers to be on the same playing field as the male wrestlers. And they showed that, by having, Princess Kimberly win the CHIKARA Grand Championship, which we've talked about on this show, having Heidi Lovelace win the CHIKARA Young Lions Cup. Ultimately, the final Campeonatos de Parejas tag team champions in CHIKARA history were the Bird and the Bee of Willow Nightingale and Solo Darling. So it's never been, something that CHIKARA has shied away from. And this match, in my opinion, is probably the best example they ever did of a male versus woman match of any sort. Eddie Kingston's CHIKARA Grand Championship run was absolutely phenomenal. It was great at the time. Watching it back, a decade plus later, it holds up so very well. When he won the title from Mike Quackenbush, it was this amazing moment. He became the first CHIKARA Grand Champion. There was no better representation of CHIKARA in that era than Eddie Kingston. And his run not only was chock full of fantastic matches, but it had this good overarching storyline, both one of Eddie Kingston having a bad knee, that, he started down that injury path, at the hands of Vin Gerard, and then ultimately, this obsession with the title, starting to consume Eddie Kingston and lead toward him, becoming more and more and more heelish throughout his title run before he would ultimately lose the title, and then, for a short period of time, become a full-blown heel after that. One thing that he did really well in that reign, though, was kind of subtly, play the tweener role, shout out Tracy Smothers, but kind of lean more towards heel depending on who his opponent was and how the crowd reacted. And that's why I love Eddie Kingston so much. He's such a versatile, on-the-fly type of wrestler that can really feed off a crowd's energy and, perform based off of that, instead of these kind of canned performances. We see so many wrestlers, kind of become like deers in headlights when they don't get the reaction that they're looking to for, from the crowd, but not Eddie Kingston. He thrives off of that atmosphere. And this match is a great example of that, because this was, Sara Del Rey's, I'll say, pretty much her farewell to CHIKARA. She would have, one more match after this, but at this point, the writing was on the wall that she was going to the WWE, where she would ultimately be, a trainer, which she's currently, still there to this day. So it's been quite successful for her. But, it was kind of apparent that that's what was happening. I think the news was out there, and, the crowd really got behind Sara. There was no reason to believe that she was going to win this match going into it, but she did an absolutely phenomenal job, a true testament to both of the wrestlers in this match, that they got the crowd to bite as much as they did on the near falls, that they got the crowd to react, and that, me watching this match a decade later, having seen it and having known the result, still kind of getting up for those near falls, which to me is always a great sign of a great pro wrestling match. So here, they kind of go the whole, intergender trope at the start of Kingston, being respectful and not really wanting to kind of go toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose, and have that gritty style fight that he's known for with Sara. And this plays great into Kingston's kind of backstory in CHIKARA as well, that ultimately, what really escalated his beef with Chris Hero was watching Chris Hero disrespect, one of his students and Mickey Knuckles when Kingston was forced to team with her. And King, he referenced that a lot throughout his feud with Hero, so it makes sense that, here wrestling another woman that's also kind of a student or disciple of Chris Hero. You know, he would be very mindful of that and not want to punch and fight and scrap the Eddie Kingston way. But Sara, you know, she wanted the best out of Eddie Kingston, and she does a great job, you know, brutalizing him throughout the early goings of the match and really talking lots of trash. And there's this great moment where Kingston's down and he starts like begging Sara to keep hitting him, and almost like he was looking for that justification of being like, I know I'm going to have to fight her, so I need her to fight me first so that, you know, I can cleanse my soul of, you know, the sins that I'm about to commit. And it's just a really great story throughout this match with all of that. Normally, you know, you kind of get that story in an intergender match and you're like, oh yeah, okay, the guy doesn't want to hit the woman. But it really, really worked here, and you know, added just this build up throughout the match that became this like escalation of violence, and that's exactly what we got after Sara, you know, beats him down throughout the match. Like I said, talking lots of smack, going to work on Kingston's bad knee. Kingston finally makes the comeback and goes through this series of just like payback, just headbutts and forearms and stiff strikes and you know, dragging kicks to the back, which are, you know, again, Tracy Smothers, you know, goddamn unnecessary to kick someone in the back. And it ends up, you know, busting open Sara's nose. And again, just a little bit of blood in this match. It adds to the visuals and it adds to the story and it adds to the overall package so very well. And it gets the crowd that was already behind Sara even more behind her. You know, they were cheering her when she was on top, and then with that little bit of blood, and she kind of takes on that underdog challenger approach, you know, it allows the crowd to get behind her even more, and it's great. They build into this big time, you know, trading of big moves and near falls and kickouts and just throwing absolute bombs at each other, which is so good. And Kingston gives Sara so much in her farewell here, lets her kick out of backdrop drivers, and at one point he hits her with the back fist of the future 2 times in a row, but they're kind of like flash ones out of nowhere, and she gets to kick out of that. But they did, you know, a really good job too, not, you know, diminishing Kingston's finisher, because Sara had like worked on his hand a bunch throughout the match. So again, you know, he hits his back fist finisher twice, but he's got the bad hand, so it wasn't, you know, quite as effective as it might have been otherwise. So it's not like they're spamming and ruining his finish at all there. Sara gets the big pile driver, which she was using as her finisher at that point. That's only good for 2. They trade, you know, crazy strikes. Sara gets a big capo kick. I can't stress enough, you know, how much the crowd was behind her and how that atmosphere just adds to the overall package of the match. But at the end of the day, Kingston was able to blast her with one more back fist of the future. And, you know, knowing that might not be enough from the kickouts earlier, he hits her with the American D, his sliding D finish, that Masato Tanaka style sliding elbow that he was really trying to get over as his finisher at this point. And, you know, that was the cherry on top, and it was enough to put Sara away. The crowd gives her a great reception after this match. And just, like I said, a really good farewell for a performer that I think, you know, if you're a newer fan, you've seen the fruits of her labor through NXT. You've seen, you know, the women's wrestlers that have, you know, worked under her and learned from her, the Sasha Banks and the Baileys and the Charlotte Flairs and everybody like that. But maybe you're unfamiliar with Sara, you know, in and of herself, but she's someone that has, you know, quite the catalog, you know, especially through Shimmer, that if you're a fan of women's wrestling and you really didn't, you know, get to see that early era of, you know, Shimmer and the IWA Mid-South Volcano Girls Tournament and everything Dave Prazak did there, and, you know, the APW out in California, you know, them really trying to bolster, you know, with the chick fight tournaments and really try to, you know, make a statement for women on the independents. Sara Del Rey was a part of all of that and had some of the best matches, you know, not only in women's independent wrestling, but dare I say of, you know, the early 2000s independence in and of itself. And she's someone that, you know, unfortunately, because she went the trainer route, you know, maybe will not ever get the credit that she deserves as a performer, but really, you know, check out her catalog. A lot of the early Shimmer events are now available on the High Spots Wrestling Network, so a great value there for $9.99 a month to check out a lot of her work and, you know, see the influence that she's had on so many of the, women's wrestlers in the WWE and AEW today. This match, though, it's so great. It's another notch in the fantastic CHIKARA resume of Eddie Kingston. A great farewell for Sarah, and, one of the better Grand Championship matches, in my opinion, the company ever did. It's an absolute fight. It's an absolute war. It's a big-time drama, heavyweight title fight, which is exactly what it should be. And you can watch this match, of course, on independentwrestling.tv. Subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again next time as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.